Are you ready for the golden age? The Quantum Galaxy Network presents Making Life Brighter on the Voice America Variety Channel, where we prepare you and the planet for the golden age. Making Life Brighter features experts in their field and visionaries sharing their unique keys for sustainability on Earth, including all cutting-edge healing modalities, consciousness training, and natural healing. Tune in every Thursday for valuable golden nuggets of universal harmony and coherency with body, mind, and spirit. Each week, Winifred introduces you to thought leaders, best-selling authors, influencers, and Grammy Award-winning musicians. Making Life Brighter is your source for inspiring us to live in cooperation and purpose as we prepare for the golden age and beyond. The Quantum Galaxy Network invites you to join Making Life Brighter as we prepare for the golden age. Making Life Brighter is your forum for healing, inspiring, and uplifting entertainment. Here is your host, Winifred Adams.
Welcome, everybody. Hope you're going jolly out there today, and welcome. Thanks for listening. You're listening to Making Life Brighter Radio, and we were talking last week as a carryover from the prior week. First, we started talking about time jumpers. Then we talked about the newness that's happening and how people are going to view the energy shifting that's taking place. So last week was kind of an in-depth show on consciousness. And I was sharing with you about how the Pleiadians, among others, were citing through Barbara Marciniak the specificity of the periodic table and the expansion of all the elements on the periodic table. And when they begin to move or dance, each one of them opens like a fractal dimension. And the fractal dimension is something that is an experiential space, a place of being. So interestingly enough, between last show and this show, I spoke with Full Colin Russell - J. Colin Gould, and I was discussing that with him. And he said to me, as a matter of fact, he said, that's exactly what I did with the periodic table. He said, the NSA even came along to take a look at what I was doing and confirmed that. So there is truth in that. And what was shared last week can also be referenced in the Family of Light book by Barbara Marciniak, which we've been talking about actually since the beginning of this year. And so those books and that information are very, very timely for this particular place in the history of the cosmos. So if you can open up a 2D periodic table and make it into a living, breathing, multi-dimensional, or open its multi-dimensional awareness, which brings forth every vibrating, oscillating property of each element on that table. And each element has its own property based on its makeup and its own, say, subset of information. Now, why this is fascinating and I'm bringing it to your attention is because it's very similar to the work that I do inside a body with medical intuition and quantum healing. And so Making Life Brighter is the new tagline for Making Life Brighter as of last August when we relaunched, is that we are preparing you for the golden age and beyond. And part of that golden age, which is already in existence, it's already here in a different dimensional frequency, and it's actually been here for some time. It's been here since about 2001, in that time frame. So where people say, oh, we're coming along to the golden age. Well, yes, your experience in consciousness is coming along to that space of consciousness to meet the golden age. But the golden age, which is more of a 5D reality, is already in existence. It's a dimensional frequency, or say, experience of your living being in a space and time or just a space, a suspended space, similar to what Russell did with the periodic table. It just exists. And that dimensional frequency is something that you can dive into and you can meet consciously and live it consciously. There's a little bit of pulling, let's say, from the resistance that's trying to keep things in duality or keep the changing of the guard from happening. But the golden age is already there. It's in existence around you and is literally a dimensional frequency away. So I bring to your attention some of these things that Russell did, some of the things that were channeled through Barbara Marciniak and the Pleiadians to give you kind of a felt sense proof of what's happening as those dialogues develop. And the quantum field, as I see it when I work on someone, is exactly like what he talked about in the periodic table. So the quantum field is, well, some call it a 0 point, and it can be a 0 point, but it exists as oscillating light particles. And those light particles all have a property and they have an intelligence. In a neutral, quote unquote, neutral state, those properties simply oscillate through the sound current of the source energy. And the source energy is sometimes mistaken for the central sun. But the central sun is actually, let's say, a stop along the way to the source energy where the opportunity to merge back into source energy would be the objective. And that mergence now has one devoid of everything that has to do with duality and the pushing and the pulling. So electrons move, but let's say in duality by pushing and pulling. They move in a manner of physics by a negative and a plus. And if we take that further and we begin to look at, let's say, sacred geometry, the oscillating particulates of a quantum field are vibrating and speaking as you look at that sacred geometry. So take a crop circle, for example, and you see a particular design laid out in the field or a picture of it. And that does something to you. It speaks to your soul. It speaks to the oscillating biofield of you, which is a part of the quantum field of physics. And yet your consciousness is imbued within this field. It's everywhere in the field. And when you look at the picture of the crop circle, for example, you are feeling the imprint and looking at the vibratory frequency of the imprint in the field. Now, let's say you were to stack another, let's say, crop circle or sacred geometry on top of that, and you looked at both of them. Now you would get a differential of those two vibrating fields, and you'd have feedback on that to your body. You would also have a different experience of it because now it's changed what you were first looking at. So similar to what Russell had been doing with the periodic table, he took it off of a two-dimensional piece of paper and looked at it for what it really is. See, each element has its own property: methane, pentane, butane, gold, silver, copper, everything. It all has its own frequency. And that vibrating frequency has an intelligence pattern locked into it in its expression and in its potential. So that's why I first said that it was fractals of dimensional frequency when you expand it and look at it, because similar to a medical intuitive looking into a body, you're looking through all layers of the biofield simultaneously, and you're able to see the differential of energy that's not moving or that's pooled in one area versus another area. In other words, it's not in flow, it's stagnated someplace, or it's backing up someplace, or it's flowing too much into some place. So observing that is really what medical intuition is about, and being able to then translate that back into words that say there's an issue in the liver, or there's an issue potentially in this body system over here. But really, it's speaking of this fractal vibratory rate and the fractal dimensional expression. So let me give you an example. If you had cancer, let's say you had, we'll say breast cancer, because that's very common today. Whatever is at the heart of the anomaly that's going on in that expression is beginning to override the expression of the healthy cells around it. It's kind of taking over and hijacking the vibratory frequency of the healthy cells. And when it does this, it's now actually beginning to entrain the healthy cells to its vibratory frequency, which is dominant. It may be rogue, but it's dominant. So there is a time and a place for correction of energies that are, let's say, not in harmony with a biology or your spirit, or that which is in the 0 point. Because anything that's replicating out of control is replicating in a rogue manner that's not in a balance. And it's not intelligently checking in with a higher system saying, is this okay? Is this good? Because you see, all consciousness, when it's in balance, continually feeds back to source energy as a litmus test to that consciousness. And it's seeking to entrain to the higher source energy all the time. But when it's not, and it's going rogue and it's out of balance, now it's oscillating and expressing a frequency that can be literally damaging because it's outside of the harmonic that should be there. And I don't even like to use the word should, but that's the truth. So really, as we go back into the periodic table, it's so vital, because here on the earth plane, and let's say in the United States and in our world as we know it on earth, it's a vital, vital component to a society. It was brought into awareness for the ability to determine weights and measures. And those weights and measures then determine how one can contract, especially when it comes to currency. So if you think about the periodic table, it's really an oscillating currency. It's a current of multiple expressions, but somehow they work together. So instead of having a 2D reality of that to showcase, Russell turned it into a tetrahedron and created it an oscillating vibratory frequency that has a much more dynamic resonance and speaks to many, many, many more things than what was being presented in the 2D flat reality of a periodic table. So governments were saying, well, we can coin money and we can create government and we can stand on our flag because we have this periodic table here. Well, most people don't even know that's part of the whole equation. But Russell-J. Gould not only found out that that was part of the equation, he went deeper and acted upon it and looked into it scientifically to expand that and see what it did. and by doing that and discovering that, all kinds of agencies were very stunned and showed up on his doorstep saying, what are you doing? What have you got here? But they had to admit that what he had there was correct. And maybe they'd been keeping some greater knowledge from the peoples for far too long. And he was the man that actually brought that forward to establish and stand on a brand new way and a higher frequency of creating currency, contracting by giving new meaning to an actual flag, and new meaning to how people witness, experience, and operate in their now space. So, going back to the example of healing in the quantum field and medical intuition, when I look into a biofield and can look deep in the tissue layers, that biofield speaks on many, many, many frequencies at once. It's speaking from outer biofield to surface tissue to subtissue to the space in between the tissues to the blood that flows through the tissues and the frequency of the blood that meets the tissues. It speaks to the vibratory frequency of organs, organ systems, how the organ systems are working in relation to the actual organ, and then how the bones are articulating new cells and imprinting. Because you see, let's say you got an insight and you had an aha moment. Most people run out and they share their aha moment and say, oh, look at what I got, look at what I know, look at. But they don't really sit with it so they can take it into what my master teacher always said, taking it into the marrow of your bone. And when you take it into the marrow of your bone, that's such a brilliant truth because it is a fact. You don't know anything till you're able to take it into the marrow of your bone. And when you take it that deep, now you have transformative information going on within you. Because that information articulates back out through the bloodstream, and you're making billions of cells every second. So then what is being imprinted to your blood differently than it had previously? There's a lot of merit to contemplation, and we're going to talk about that next. Stay tuned. You're listening to Making Life Brighter Radio, and I'm your host, Winifred Adams, and we'll be right back. We're talking quantum today.
All right.
One man is growing old and one man is being told that.
Welcome back to Making Life Brighter with host and leading medical intuitive Winifred Adams on the Voice America Variety Channel, your preferred choice for conscious education and entertainment, featuring experts in their field and visionaries preparing the planet for the golden age and beyond. For more information, visit us at makinglifebrighter.com in the media section. Be sure to like us on Facebook at Making Life Brighter. If you have questions or comments, please email us at radio@makinglifebrighter.com. That's radio@makinglifebrighter.com. And now, back to the show with your host, Winifred Adams.
Hey, everybody. Hope you're going jolly today. Thanks for listening. We're talking quantum physics today. Yes, we are. We're talking about the periodic table and the oscillating particulates of all the elements and how that pertains to the quantum field, the quantum need for change in our entire society, going all the way back to the weights and measures. And then, of course, what different authority that might even give to a flag. So you can find us here on Making Life Brighter on Facebook, and you can like us there so that you follow along to what we're doing. And you can find these shows and other shows on YouTube at Making Life Brighter. But today we are going back to the discovery and the copyrighted discovery of Full Russell-J. Gould Because remember, he had to file in the Title IV flag and log that into the State Department along with his periodic table. And that gave a unique authority to the flag and what's going on with the flag, unlike any other country, unlike any other time frame. And what we were talking about in the last segment has something to do with that flag and how it's given, let's say, additional authority or meaning. And the periodic table, as they were talking about in the book Family of Light, will begin showing itself to you as we move further into this photon belt, and really our galaxy is moving and the earth is moving, and it appears that time is quickening, but really consciousness is quickening into a new dimensional experience. So for people, just like governments, that are a little dense yet, they are being invited into a new energy field upcoming. And that golden age energy field, without any narratives put on top of it, is actually a dimensional frequency that's already in existence. And when the biofield of an individual, inside and out, including the DNA strands, begin to expand and quicken, they begin jumping and pulsing with intelligence and information that they're picking up, not only from the environment, but also from a greater source field. And that intelligent information is able to be, let's say, synthesized into the DNA, into the biology, which becomes a reciprocal effect of expansion and knowledge and knowing. It's not a knowing that the brain can comprehend, it's a knowing deep within the heart, the spirit, and the biology, which speaks back to the quantum field and how the spirit interfaces with that. The source energy is always offering a kind of purposeful intelligence. And the purposeful intelligence has a lot to do with the electron vibratory rate by which it's moving, or even suspended. So when you're in a very blissful state, in a deep meditative state, the energy feels like it's not moving, even though you sense you're expanded, because you feel relaxed, you don't feel tense. And the greater the expansion, the more, let's say, the flow of intelligent information is passed easily, as if it's in a grid. And the grid patterning allows for a circuitry of information now to come into play. This is very important. It's similar to how crystals grow and even grow suspended in space and things like that. This intelligence is what I'm getting at. And the intelligence, or the property imbued with intelligence, infused with intelligence, it's captive, like a captive audience to the greater intelligence in that field, which is purposeful. And the purposeful intelligence begins to have an effect. So like an herb, like a cucumber is a degree 1 herb and has a very mild effect in the body. It can be very nutritive, it can be very soothing, it can be something that delivers a kind of enzyme quality in the body. It can be very hydrating because it carries much water. It can assist a body basically with conductivity and balance. Now you take garlic, which is a degree 3 herb, and that is one step below, let's say, the efficacy or impact of, let's say, an antibiotic. But garlic has a strong effect. It's got an aromatic effect that's very potent. It's got a frequency that is very strong. The property of it is very strong. So it can be an anti-parasitic, it can be an antifungal, it can be and antibacterial in your system, whereas the cucumber doesn't have that property. It's soothing, but it's helpful, yet the garlic has a very strong property and therefore can do different things in the body. This is the same with crystals. This is the same with these elements in the table. But seeing the elements suspended in time and space allows for a witness to much more that's being said, almost as if you were going to go into the tombs of all the Egyptian temples and read the hieroglyphs for the story that's been lost or the meaning in between all that. This is similar. And Russell is a person that can do that. He is one of the foremost experts of doing that in this earth plane now. So the fact that he suspended this periodic table and is not necessarily surprising given his way of looking at the world, but it's allowing a new paradigm shift to take place where governments and people can interface differently. They can contract on different terms because there's more information and there's more dimensional frequency with knowledge and intelligence to pull from there. So let's go back to the healing of a person or a body in the quantum field. As the quantum field is expanded, let's say it's settled, like I was talking about before break. You have something that's feeling relaxed. You're in a state of being that's deeply meditative. You feel like you can leave your body behind and you're one with your spirit, and you're in that sweet space of joy and relaxation. And in that space, you begin to lose your focus on time as you know it and on circumstances as you know it. Instead, you have a different awareness, and that awareness is drawing you into a greater and greater state of relaxation, which is also technically expansion. So as you're calming the vibratory rate of nervous tension, the truth is you're actually vibrating at a higher rate, even though you feel more relaxed, because you're tuning into what is being done, what is in existence there despite you. This vibratory rate has a great impact on how expression happens now and into what we call the future, because what happens today is imprinted 7 years forward. So if you think about it, every thought you think today, every word that you say today, everything is imprinted 7 years forward. Now that's more of a spiritual tenet, more of a spiritual fact. But if you think about what's going on, taking responsibility in the now space begins to put you into more of that harmonic, so that your next now is more harmonic, and the next now is more harmonic. And now you're creating an ongoing, as I call it, a necklace of beads of the next now. And what's really cool about that, similar to what I can kind of see in this insight regarding the periodic table, is that the more energy you put into the now being in harmony or expansion, relaxed expansion, the next now is in more harmonic potential to be in harmony, and so on. And then you have the availability to have that expansion amplified. This amplitude is not of gross energy, but of great potential. And it can change the outcome of things based on that potential energy that's sitting behind it. So every thought you think changes the chessboard in front of you. And where the move you might have wanted to make seems in alignment, it now can be altered because the previous move was out of balance. It wasn't in the now. Now, sometimes you get that reflection back to you, so it's a very stark contrast and creates the intended correction, the necessary correction. However, when you're moving into a space of optimizing your consciousness, optimizing toward your spirit, optimizing to the greater field of source energy and all that is, the God source, the master power, all of that energy, the most refined light of a billion suns, which no human being can carry in their nervous system without blowing out, unless they are refined enough to carry that, which means their DNA has to be expanded to the 12 or 13 strands of DNA. And that then allows for the expression of greater potential and changes the outcome. So where people are formulating narratives that are set in stone, tapping into the greater potential of all that is has more infinite potential than the 3D reality of particular narratives. So you may be experiencing something completely different in the upcoming days than someone else. And that's because you are more aligned to that potential of outcomes. And you are in a refined frequency, which gives you access to more of those dimensional frequencies than, say, another that's more uptight or stressed out or closed down. So contemplating is a really great tool that I was taught many years ago. And it's proven to be a very strong and effective way to bring yourself into the possibility of greater insight. So people like to sit down and get creative. They sit around a table now and they group work and they get creative and they share things. But this is about personal contemplation. Taking something like, everybody wants to know, what is the meaning of my life? And they're talking 99% of the time of, what am I supposed to do for a job here on earth? What am I supposed to do in this space and time that gives my life meaning? But if you really sit and contemplate that for maybe a year, you might come up with an entirely different answer than what you previously thought. Because when you get the first energetic of an insight, maybe it's just surface, but it's speaking to and coming in on where your biological frequency or harmonic is operating in that moment. Now, if you continue to refine your own operating system to a very deep, spiritually attuned, oscillating expansion, well, then further insight could be even greater and have more meaning than the first insight. And if that continues on, you just keep sitting with it and waiting with it, and it continues to expand and grow. Now you've got a very complete message that's coming to you as not just what about this, but rather more of a fact. And that fact becomes as apparent to you in your being as an experience on the inside. And the experience is something so profound you cannot deny it. When you have that experience, now, just like Russell seeing the periodic table come alive in the tetrahedron and all the things about it speaking in dimensional fractals and fields and things, teaching what they're there and alive about. Now you have a depth of understanding that you would look back on and see the previous understanding is almost infantile, almost childish by comparison, because the expansion is so much more profound. But no one can take that experience away from you because you had the experience of that energetic field. And that's what quantum healing really is. It's moving into the reorganization of energies and putting them back into their expression of proper, let's say, 0-point potential. So on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more on the quantum field here on Making Life Brighter Radio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Gonna break free tonight.
Welcome back. For more information, please visit us at makinglifebrighter.com. If you'd like more information on intuitive coaching, coursework, or to book an appointment with medical intuitive Winifred Adams, please email us at radio@makinglifebrighter.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook and download the app. Go to makinglifebrighter.com for more information. And now, back to the show with your host, Winifred Adams.
Hey, we're back. You're listening to Making Life Brighter Radio, and I'm your host, Winifred Adams. Thank you so much for listening. And we are talking about the quantum field today. We're going a little deeper in the dive about the quantum physics of your consciousness. And this summer semester, I'm going to be teaching a very special course on that expanded consciousness. And so if you're interested and would like to sign up for the course, it's a deep dive. It'll be a couple months long, actually. It'll be like 1 or 2 days in the month, every month. It's very deep. It's transformative, really. So it's a consciousness series, and it's a very, very, very profound, transformative, deep dive. I have usually taken this and taught this in person in immersive 4 to 7 day retreats. And this time I'm going to do it online. And this will require some quiet time, some deep contemplation, and some self-examination, but it's going to be incredibly rewarding. People that have gone through it say their lives have been changed. And I believe that, because when you understand the idea of intelligence that's really at work behind the quantum field and within the quantum field, and you respect that intelligence, you begin dropping the judgments and the opinions, and you naturally let go of some of the polarization within the body. This extended polarization, which I've been talking about for years here on Making Life Brighter, is something that I've seen from day one in doing the work that I do. And when people become extremely ill to the point where they have no choice but to surrender, it's only then that they make a choice, almost like a parent that's disciplining an unruly child within, and they just give up on the old narrative because they don't have a choice and they recognize their life is in the balance. They may die. So sometimes people come to that only at their very last few minutes, but most have a little bit more of a ping from their spirit and an inkling that they may want to get ahead of that curve, because not only can you do some of the karmic whittling that frees up your spirit to come closer to you and commune with you at a level that really we all want. That's truly what all people seek, is that consciousness communion. And it's not intelligence, but it is an intelligence beyond the brain. And you don't know that until you have an experience of it. Just like you don't know something until you grow up and try it on. You don't know how to ride a bicycle until you get on and try and ride a bicycle. Now, some people are advanced enough in their conscious awareness that they could actually have the experience of riding a bicycle having never ridden one. But that's not most people. And so we will come to that place in time. And as I've said for many years, we are quickly moving into sound and light healing. We are moving into frequency healing because it is the change in frequency that dictates the experience. So if you're looking at the periodic table flat on a page, it doesn't do much for you. You can read it, you know what those elements are, you can see it, you're told and taught what ones do, and maybe in the science lab, in the chemistry lab, you get an experience of what happens when you put butane with methane and so on, and you see their properties come alive. But you have to experiment with that to do that. However, in a more advanced future now that we will have, an advanced now, you will be in the experience of witnessing the properties speaking to you and all of the articulated nature of the quantum field as it invites you to its vibratory frequency of intelligence. So no thought can technically get in the way if you're there. If you're thinking at something, you're blocking what can be and what can be coming in on a frequency. But when you cease to think about it, you end up experiencing or witnessing it if you are on frequency. And we are learning to manage the energies within us so that we have an availability to expand into new experiences and new frequencies. Now, I'm a lover of crystals, and I started out doing healing by making jewelry sight unseen for people. And this jewelry was very powerful for folks because they would come back and say, wow, my whatever I had, all the symptoms went away and I feel much better. And it began to help people because I had an intuitive knowing of their body system frequencies and was able to create and match something together that would help balance their body systems to not only a more healed frequency, but one that's more in harmony with their spirit. And this became my very first segue into what we'll call the healing arts. And so that is something that I've dearly loved to do, and I am doing it again now. As a matter of fact, I just made some things for someone in particular, custom, and those things really have begun the balancing work in that person's body. It's great to see it. It's amazing actually to see it on the person, because once you see that, you're like, wow, this is like a tool. And so the crystals themselves have a frequency, they have a consciousness, they have a harmony. And when you recognize, we like to see it through beauty. We say, oh, that's very beautiful. Oh, that feels good. Oh, I just like it. But you don't know why you like it. So we're talking about what's happening up underneath it. And what's happening there is exactly what I'm talking about in this entire quantum segment. that the frequencies of different pieces and the properties that they lend to whatever it is you need or you want. So let's take my favorite stone, tourmaline. And I work with all colors of tourmaline, all kinds of tourmaline. Black tourmaline is very protective for EMFs, as we've talked about, and pink tourmaline is very balancing for the endocrine system and also the feminine and the heart space and softening into the heart. And the green tourmaline is very grounding. All these different colors have different properties. And when you blend them together, the whole thing has a different property. It's also very protective around the heart space. And with so much going on today that is EMF heavy, 5G heavy, this is a God-given gift, a beautiful tool from source energy and the earth that you can use to balance the body out. So soon I'm going to be dropping on you my new project that is all about crystals and healing and the work that I do in custom creating for people, which I love. But I want to share with you a stone that I don't make things with necessarily, but one that's very unique and speaks to what we're talking about today. So I just kind of want to share this with you because it's a beautiful one, and I have a beautiful one of it that I use from time to time to meditate with and so on. This stone is called apophyllite. So apophyllite is like a clear quartz crystal, but if you look at it, it's almost sparkly. So where like Herkimer diamond is double tourmalated on the end, and it's got this beautiful resonance, this power frequency in it. This is a different frequency altogether. It oftentimes comes from India. It's found in India. And India has a real rich history of masters, of those that have mastered the energy fields through all time, those that have what we call enlightened, that they've come from, being in a regular human body with 2 strands of DNA, and by the time they're done, before they leave here, they have 12 strands and so on. It's a traditional spacing on the planet that not only has much in the way of rich minerals and crystals, but they recognize that as a culture, and they utilize that to help hold their frequencies steady. And apophyllite comes from that area. And this stone, this particular crystal, is clear, it's white, it's pure. It's for interdimensional awareness, and it helps with opening the crown chakra, which is the top of your skull, and the third eye, of course. And it supports the infusion of spiritual light, and it helps to make light in the body. So this unique stone has been one that helps people attune to higher frequencies, kind of like an angelic realm, a dimension, a domain that's able to help people connect more clearly from the inside. And once you go inside, this particular crystal helps you kind of see the geometric corridors of light that go in all directions. It's the same thing I was talking about with the periodic table. When you open up those fractals and you begin to look at the elements, just like when you go into a body and medical intuition and you look at the elements that the tissue is suggesting. So this particular crystal, apophyllite, does that. And if you work with it, it's really, if you're beginning and just starting out, this may not be the crystal for you. It's a little bit advanced, but I'm just sharing with you what it does. And I thought it was interesting correlation to what we've been talking about, because it's on that plane of existence of taking you into deeper experiential, like prisms of dimensional knowingness, the dimensional light frequencies of awareness. And you can meditate with it, you can keep it in a room, and it tends to raise the vibration of a room. But it basically facilitates what we would call interdimensional travel, or meeting up with your guides and your angels. So people that are very heady in our world Don't give too much credence to guides and angels. But when you've had the experience that you can't deny of your guides and your angels, or someone else's guides and angels, like I see every day when I do my work, I'm seeing the spirit life around each person I'm working on, and they're talking. They're talking to me. They're giving information that how would I know that if they weren't really talking? You know, the spirit world is right there, just like we were talking about last time, where they were talking about the dragons are right there. Well, the spirit world of light is all around us. And when you can move into that next dimensional spacing, now you have the ability to go further in your expansion of experiencing light and sound. And so again, I'm going to be signing people up right away for this new course in the summer semester. And if you're interested in that, you can go to makinglifebrighter@yahoo.com and reach out to me there. And there'll be limited spacing, so you may want to do that really soon. But we will be continuing this conversation because we are preparing for the golden age and beyond. And I would like you to understand that all these things that are brought to you on radio and the interviews and everything are somehow coming together right now. It's coming together in this time frame. It's very important. It's a beautiful window, and what better time than this summer? So we'll have more next week. You're listening to Making Life Brighter Radio. Thank you so much for listening. Go like us on Facebook and YouTube. Check it out there. And if you're interested in the coursing, reach out to me. makinglifebrighter@yahoo.com. Go jolly, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.